This upcoming weekend is going to be an extremely exciting one for UFC fans, as there's going to be technically not really just one, but two championship defenses at this upcoming pay-per-view. Both of them in the same fight. World heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou is finally going to defend his championship against the interim heavyweight champion of the world, Ciryl Gane, in a match that really there should be no title unification ramifications in at all. And this is a fight that speaks not only to just how illegitimate and unnecessary a lot of these interim championships are, but also to the lack of respect that the UFC has shown to Francis Ngannou. So there are a few different stories going on with this fight. One of them in particular is an incident that happened a few months ago when Francis Ngannou and Ciryl Gane encountered each other backstage at a UFC event. And so Francis Ngannou and Ciryl Gane, they used to train together. And so you would think that they would be pretty friendly with one another, even despite the fact that, they are both contenders in the same division, that Ciryl Gane is such a highly ranked contender for Francis Ngannou's championship. But it seems like the friendship is pretty much off, because Francis Ngannou, basically, he snubbed Ciryl Gane, didn't even acknowledge that he was there. And so there are a lot of people that want to try to put that in Francis Ngannou and say that it was a low-class act by the champion, that he should have given more respect to his friend and more acknowledgement. And I think under most cases, there would be an argument there. But there really isn't much of one there when you consider the amount, the extent to which the UFC has disrespected Francis Ngannou since he has become the champion. And the fact that Ciryl Gane has actually, just in holding that interim championship, has kind of become a tool of the UFC's disrespect to Francis Ngannou. To really understand exactly why that is the case, you have to kind of reel back and look at exactly how it was that interim championship match for the interim championship got put together in the first place. That fight between Derek Lewis and Ciryl Gane. And basically it got put together because Francis Ngannou said that he wasn't ready to fight in the month that the UFC wanted him to fight. But it wasn't as if the layoff was going to be for months and months and months. Francis Ngannou basically told the UFC that he was going to be ready to fight the next month. The offending difference in time was a period of 30 days. And over a period of just 30 days, the UFC came out and said, it looks like Francis Ngannou doesn't want to fight. It looks like we're going to need an interim champion. Which was absolutely absurd. And I don't think that you would ever see anything like that if it wasn't for the detail that Dana White, as much as people like him and as much as people like everything that he's done for the UFC, he is a little bit of a carny. And quite frankly, it seems like a lot of the time, a lot of the things that he does seem to be focused on not allowing particular fighters to feel like they're too important to the franchise. This whole, he doesn't want to fight. They're too afraid to fight. This is something that the UFC and Dana White in particular, they trot out every so often when it seems like, a fighter wants to take time off that's inconvenient for the UFC. Every so often when a fighter decides that they want a little bit more money, this is something that comes out. And it certainly doesn't seem to help matters that Francis Ngannou does seem to be a world heavyweight champion that maybe the UFC arguably didn't want. Actually, it kind of feels like it's been quite a long time since there has been a heavyweight champion of the world that the UFC actually does want. And it kind of seems like right now the world heavyweight champion that the UFC actually wants is Jon Jones. As embarrassing as that should be for the entirety of the sport, especially given Jon Jones's character. It seems like even Ciryl Gane might not necessarily be the champion that the UFC wants, despite the fact that Ciryl Gane becoming the world heavyweight champion might actually be the best thing to ever happen to that division. If you were to look out at the potential, at the current batch of potential champions for the world heavyweight championship, the one guy who seems to pose the best possibility of revolutionizing that division is Ciryl Gane. He's not one of these fighters who's just, a big overweight plotter just trying to throw heavy hands. He's a guy that has the size, he has the weight, he has the strength, but he also has a lot of skill. You look at the totality of his skills, and while I don't think that Francis Ngannou is a slouch by any stretch of the imagination, I would argue that Ciryl Gane is a much more skilled fighter. And honestly, I'm of the opinion that Jon Jones at heavyweight probably wouldn't even stand much of a chance against Ciryl Gane. But that's really neither here nor there of the current, of the current topic of discussion. The one thing that I will say for certain is that, as understandable as it is, that Francis Ngannou might look at Ciryl Gane as, somebody that, that he doesn't really appreciate the way that he's being used to disrespect in Francis Ngannou, that's not really Ciryl Gane's fault. The fact that there's a World Heavyweight Championship fight scheduled this weekend does make Ciryl Gane a very convenient punching bag to take this out on, although he's not going to be very compliant in that. I think that really Francis Ngannou's real issue obviously is going to be with UFC management. And UFC management might find a very big problem on their hands should Francis Ngannou manage to retain his World Heavyweight Championship this weekend. Because he's basically said that he's looking at a number of different options, and he's actually looking at the ones that are going to pay. So he says that he's not going to fight for 500 grand or 600 grand anymore, and especially not as the champion. And he might even be willing to go boxing in order to get a payday. Tyson Fury is very confident of his chances against Francis Ngannou. He's very confident about Deontay Wilder's chances against Francis Ngannou, and yeah, he likely should be. But that is a fight that could definitely draw some money, could definitely draw a lot of attention. And right now, if Francis Ngannou's priority is to get paid, if the UFC isn't going to show him the money, it's entirely possible that he might simply not sign another contract, and he might simply go on and leave them without a heavyweight champion of the world. And if UFC management can't find it in themselves to show him a lot more respect than what they've shown him already, maybe that's exactly what he should do.